Welcome back to another episode of Practice Underwater. We have with us here today our Director of Mastermind, Alex Sharp, filling in for Matt Garino on who is poor man is in St. Lucia right now. So we're here covering for him, thinking about him, and hoping he returns and is able to resume his role as a co-host of Practice Underwater. Yeah, it's an injury report. Matt is out this week with St. Lucia. Filling in is substitute Alex Sharp. Yeah, there we go. So we've been telling him to stay ready on the bench so that when the game comes, here he is, and he killed it last week, and here he is again. So we'll quickly recap part one for you guys. So we had this Doc Tim. I think this is a really good one because I think one thing we really harped on in the episode last week was mindset and how mindset matters so much. And we keep saying that. And I almost feel like we annoy people with how much we say that. And so I wanted to use this opportunity where we had a guest that had a lot of mindset issues to really break them down. And so Suzanne did a great job in the interview of kind of showing us everything. And she poked and prodded and got all the information out of him. And then in the outro, we kind of digested it and really went through the mindset and how that works. And so in part two, Suzanne is actually going to go through the treatment plan of how we're going to grow this practice. What are our initial steps? I think she talked about it last week. This is an ideal coaching client on a lot of levels. Their practice is one that we feel like we could grow very quickly. And we'd like to show that. And so she'll show why and how we attempt to do that. So just to give you a quick recap, in case you forgot from last week, our Doc Tim bought a practice. It has 8 ops. It did about $750K. He then added himself 5 days a week without expanding the amount of hygiene. So he now has 9 doctor days and 6.5 hygiene days. And so there's this large imbalance that we talked about a lot. He's very proud of himself. He's proud of his staff overhead being low. We really talked about that in the outro of last week. And but he does want to group practice something between 1.5 to 2 million. And a lot of the things we talked about in the outro of last week was just the things weren't adding up. The 9 doctor days to 6.5 hygiene days, that in our mind doesn't add up. The mindset around overhead doesn't add up. His seller staying on, there's a lot of weird things about that not really adding up with his vision or I guess not adding up with the current situation. It could work if he added some hygiene. But that was a big part of our conversation, which is kind of looking at his mindset and seeing the gaps. And so, Alex, do you have anything that I missed or you'd like to add before we hop into the interview?
For me, the best part of this episode, especially part 2, was Suzanne succinctly breaking down what's the game plan, what comes first. Because I think a lot of early practice owners tend to put the cart before the horse. And Suzanne does a phenomenal job of diagnosing and then treatment planning and breaking it up into a stepwise progression of what needs to happen rather than overwhelming the dentist and consequently the staff. Suzanne breaks it down in such a really easy way that if Tim has the ears to hear, he can make some big improvements.
That's awesome. Yep, and I'm with you. And I think it's it's something we'll talk about a little bit in the outro. So we're gonna go through the interview, and Alex and I will spend a good amount of time in the outro, kind of breaking down the different things that were discussed and sort of the plan moving forward, and why each component is sort of necessary. So. Here's another interview with our real doc, fake name, Tim.
Tim, welcome back to part 2 of Practice Underwater. When we were done last week, I was saying how excited I was to get into all of the details. So let's give our audience a quick recap of things. So we've got a high patient flow, 40 new patients a month. We've got about 2,500 active patients and then some. A database that you say has a feast of patients,
Yeah.
a ton. So fill in a few of the details here with the seller who's become the associate and that area.
Yeah. So how's it going, everyone? Thanks, Suzanne, for having me. I just bought the office a couple months ago, and the seller is staying on. He plans to stay on for a couple years. We have about 8 shares. So for me, for now, it's going pretty well. So that's the story there, pretty much.
Okay, so we've got we said a total of about 6.5, 7 days of hygiene.
Yep.
got 9 doctor days, right?
Yes. Yep. 9 doctors.
We have 0 marketing. We have, like I said, 40 new patients a month. We've got about 15 Google reviews, you said. We've got no website currently or anything in that realm, but we've got more patients than we can handle at this point, right? Which is always a good problem to have. So everybody on the other end listening to this is going, "Oh man, he lucked out," right?
Yeah. This is definitely like a very like high opportunity practice for sure. Absolutely.
So we have one assistant that works with you. The seller does his own pretty much assisting. Does he use an isolite or nothing?
No, he suctions for himself, and he's just figured it out. He's been doing it for a long time, so he's figured out a way to get it done. I don't know exactly how. I don't watch him, but he does it. So
Okay, loves doing fillings.
he does
Um,
crowns, fillings. You know what I mean? That's what he does.
okay, and then you've got one office manager, but she's involved in a lot of the insurance side, the financial side. The other
Yeah.
assistant answers the phone primarily. So what, she in check-in basically? Does she normally sit and check in and then when he calls her, she runs to the back?
Yeah, exactly. So the exactly the office manager isn't really like the manager. I'm the manager. She's the front desk who does insurance and the finances. She doesn't present finances. My other assistant presents the finances, and the second front desk is the check-in person who then runs back to help the seller when he calls out her name to help her.
Okay. And so you said your vision eventually is to go down to 3 days clinically. You want to manage this huge practice.
Yeah,
Um, get another associate at some point and expand with other specialties.
yeah, definitely. That's my vision, and then maybe another practice as well down the road. That's I did have some goals to maybe have multiple practices, but for now we gotta start with this one. So,
Okay. So I like to hear you say, for now, we're going to start with this one. Because right now, you have
yeah,
more than you can handle, right?
yeah,
So, mhm. And I think on the multi-specialty side, let's kind of put that aside as well, because I feel like your patients need to come back for regular care first and foremost. And you perhaps having someone else to help you so that you can provide some of these higher end, not necessarily you're going to do the multi-specialty, but you mentioned on part 1, you mentioned implants, right? You want to start doing implants. You want to do a little bit of the high end procedures. I want you to imagine a world for a minute here where you have longer, more comprehensive procedures and how that's going to have you be the bottleneck of the schedule again, right?
yeah, yeah,
So you need to get bodies in the door. Like you have all of these bodies that are out there and you're only able to see probably regularly like a little bit over half of them.
mhm,
So kind of just to recap our numbers here, we've got 2,500 active patients. Here's an interesting concept or an interesting thing that I'm pulling out of Dental Intel is that we've got 1850, so 700 difference here of patients that haven't even, they've been seen in the last, they've been seen in the last 18 months, but they haven't sat in a hygiene chair at all. They are not considered active, quote unquote, hygiene patients. What are your
mhm.
thoughts there?
Yeah, you're right. There's a lot of patients that slip through the cracks, for sure, and because there's no communication with them, and that's why I put in revenue well, and we've slowly turned that on. There's a lot of different features of revenue well, so we've, every week we've added a little more, whatever my staff has been comfortable with kind of doing.
Mm-hmm. So just for our audience, Revenue Well is a patient communication system. Just like Weave, just like Flex, just like some of the other programs. Um, Now, just putting the patient communication system was a big deal for the team, right? You mentioned in part one that was kind of like one of those first changes that you put in place. They were probably contacting patients by phone previously, or maybe not if they weren't confirmed. So I would say first and foremost, we need to get these bodies in the door. You've got all of these bodies that are going to start looking for other homes if we're not going to be in contact with them. So if I were to say one of my top recommendations, and like I said, there's so many opportunities here. I'm going to say opportunity number one: expand hygiene yesterday. Okay, we need these patients to get in, and yes, there's a low perio ratio, but at this point, I would like them to come in at least twice a year. I would like these patients to be able to be seen. Now, we only have 55% of them actually scheduled ahead. So if I were to say one of the first things to do, and again, as you're expanding hygiene, let's actually sit down with your hygiene team and have a meeting where you get things calibrated. And you just say, okay, one of the big changes, and it may rock their world, but one of the big changes is you're going to make sure that they're appointing ahead, and they're appointing ahead with value, so that the patient knows what that next step is. That's really the proactive way, because with such a large patient base, you can't afford to necessarily be reactive. You can't afford to have so much time spent making sure everybody comes in after the fact. Okay. So expanding hygiene for me is number one, because you've got existing patients that you are going to need a spot for. You've got, if they need to come back for additional, like more than 2 appointments, you need those spots. And then you also have 40 new patients a month. Now, I did mention that you're seeing quite a few patients that are not coming back. And the new patients aren't always coming back at a high level either. Hygiene reappointment is about a third. So every new patient that comes into the practice, only about a third of them are actually scheduled ahead for something and scheduled ahead for hygiene. Okay.
Definitely,
So,
yeah.
So you've got, like I said earlier, you've got feast. However, it will be at some point, an issue if you're welcoming all these new patients. Now you're not spending on marketing, but let's put that structure in place so that when you do spend on marketing, that you actually have that system to ensure that your marketing has a return. Okay.
Yeah.
So yes, I'd like to see hygiene at least 10 days at the very minimum at first. Now, is it hard to find a hygienist?
No,
Area?
I have one that I know from another job. She's very good and she wants to work here. So as soon as the older hygienist retires, I've kind of kept her on just because she has such a huge following that I just wanted to kind of meet her patients, before she left, so I didn't get a lot of attrition in the beginning. So that's been my main goal for these first few months, is just to minimize any attrition. But you're right, I need to double the number of hygiene days almost, and
And I'm saying, Tim, we are not going to wait to add hygiene until your favorite hygienist comes in August. Okay, that's way too far away. 10 to start off with, 12 to 14 days pretty soon. Now, here's my issue. The more hygiene you add, the more doctor time we need. So if this associate is not going to help you with doing very many hygiene checks, then we're going to have a problem, right? If we're going to add all these hygiene. So I think a sit down between you and the associate is needed. And I'm calling him associate, previous seller for our audience. If that's going to, rock his boat basically, and he would like to just continue working with those redos and, other particular things that you're going to feed him, you need another associate. You've got enough room to be able to add another doctor in there. So this practice can get to your financial goal pretty quickly, in my opinion. And the more hygiene you have, obviously you need someone to be able to do exams. This is going to feed your schedules. So I say hygiene number 1, 2, this is going to feed the doctor's schedules, right? If I look at the metrics here on the types of procedures you're doing and how that impacts your per patient value, it's on the lower side. So you mentioned you wanted to do some more comprehensive dentistry and you wanted to bring in some higher procedures and to get that going. If that's the case and you want to increase the per patient value, you're going to have a bottleneck if you're the only one that's filling the schedule. Or you're saying, okay, I'm doing the hygiene check, I'm running in here, and I'm feeding the associate schedule. To some degree, he's going to have to also do hygiene checks to feed his schedule. And that's going to alleviate time for you. But at some point, you're going to continue to be the bottleneck as well. So the more hygiene you're going to add, I think you need more doctor time as well. And maybe you do some management now because there are some changes that are going to occur. So instead of having you be there 5 days a week clinically, I'd say go down to 4 days a week clinically and use one of your management days, because you're going to have meetings and you're going to talk to the team about some of these changes that are going to occur, and you're going to ruffle feathers and you are going to rock people's worlds. And so, that being said, I think you need to spend some time having them understand why you want to make these changes and how you've got these patients that are wanting to see you that you guys can't see twice a year at the level that they deserve to be seen. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think another huge thing is getting the patients back in, basically reactivating them.
Yep. So we talked about proactively making sure that now going forward, from this day on, basically, hygienists are appointing ahead, and they're appointing ahead with value. So nobody leaves the practice with an appointment not scheduled in hygiene. And you probably heard me say this quite a number of times on the podcast, is proactively making sure that we can help reduce the number of calls that have to be made after the fact to find, room in the schedule or to connect with patients. Now, we haven't even tapped into reactivation. You're absolutely right. So this is kind of, again, coming full circle with, we need hygiene to be able to see these patients.
Right.
And I always say, you've got a small window of opportunity here. When you took over the patients, yes, the seller is still there, and you want the patients to be then in the future tied to you. So I say get them in before they decide to go elsewhere, because you've purchased a patient base of 2,500 or over. Let's make sure they're choosing to see you, right? So if you tap into some of these reactivated patients, where are we going to put them? Like if someone actually starts making phone calls tomorrow, you said they're booked out 6 weeks.
Yeah. So I need maybe 2 hygienists, maybe at least another hygienist, and maybe another 2 actually.
So we're looking at hygiene days, right? I mean, you said you have 1 full-time. That's probably 4 days a week in your practice?
Yeah, 4.5. So 6.5
okay.
hygiene.
No more of these half days. Let's go with like combining. A hygienist works a full day, now in your practice. These half days are a little bit difficult because it is hard to find another hygienist that wants to work half days.
Right. You
right?
are.
That,
Right.
if somebody's coming to the practice, they're wanting a full day's worth of work, usually. Okay. So then you need a team because, I mean, if we're looking at this from the perspective of, okay, we have a patient base that wants to come in, we've got doctors that are going to get busier. Having one assistant and another one that's sort of a pseudo assistant that gets up when somebody screams her name isn't going to work in the long term. You know that,
No,
right?
it's not. No,
Yeah.
it's not. Absolutely not. No, I know. You're
So,
right. Yeah.
so have her choose. Does she want to be at the front or does she want to be at the back?
Yeah, and then hire another assistant.
Mm-hmm. Now, if you said, I mean, look, I was in that world where I was an assistant and I moved to the front. So assistants are great people to work in the front because they understand the procedures and, treatment planning. If she is your gal, can she close dentistry?
No, she cannot. She just helps out really. The one who closes the cases are my other assistant, is my other experienced assistant that works with me. She doesn't work at the front, but she works uh, with me clinically. So she's the one who understands the dentistry and she closes the cases. So it's the structure of the office is very outdated. It's not the way a modern dental office is run for sure. And I've tried to make changes. It's been very hard with the current staff. So I'm just delaying the inevitable, like you said, just out of the sake of safety but I realize all these changes that I need to make for sure.
But you know what? Delaying these changes is really just that word. It's delaying changes. Eventually the changes are going to happen. And honestly, it's affecting you financially to delay these changes. To be very honest, you're taking a hit financially to get this done. In a practice of your size, with your patient base, you really should be at that like 1.4, 1.5, So I feel like you're delaying your financial gain as well. And just having this waiting period as opposed to recognizing this revenue now rather than later. So in my opinion, you have to sit down with the two of them and decide who's going to assist. And if they both want to assist, great. But you need someone at the front desk that is actually going to be, and personally, you need two, because there's a lot of in and out. And the more you're going to expand with providers, hygiene and an associate, I feel like you're going to need one person at the front that's going to be answering the phone, that's going to be checking in patients. You've got a treatment planner, and you have your sort of pseudo office manager that actually does the insurance right now. Is she someone that is going to stay on and kind of grow as the practice grows in her role?
Yeah, I think she's good. I think she'll be here. She'll stay on. I think my main assistant will be here. I think she'll stay on. But you're right. I do need more of those defined roles. The roles are very undefined right now. It's very like cloudy.
Yep.
That's what.
I'm an assistant. I'm a front office person. Yep.
Exactly.
Let's kind of delineate that and make an assistant and front office. Now, that's not to say, and I'm saying this for the audience as well, this is not to say that we're never going to have people cross-trained or we're never going to have people helping each other out. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is if I'm an assistant, let me be in the back taking care of the doctors, taking care of everything that has to be done back there, because that list is pretty long. And if I work at the front desk, then, let's make sure those roles are really kind of clear. Yeah. So if we were going to say we're going to hire two people up front. Now, you mentioned at the beginning, hey, I like the lean and mean kind of, and I'm taking you in a different direction purposely, right? We agreed, you got to spend money to make money, right? So this is where the spending is going to happen. First and foremost is you're going to put that infrastructure in place. So you're going to have somebody at the front desk that's going to sit there, greet patients, answer the phone first, and check patients in. you're going to have someone that's going to do treatment planning, because remember, you've got quite a few providers. You're going to have someone that is a really strong person that can do treatment planning, that understands the type of dentistry that you do and gets cases closed. You want to eventually do these larger cases, you're going to need someone strong to actually be able to do treatment plan presentations and financial arrangements with patients of larger dollar values, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you're
definitely.
grooming them into that role. And then we have this full-time position to reactivate a lot of these patients and keep them coming into the hygiene schedule. So I say you've got what I call a patient care coordinator right there, taking care of patients who are overdue, making sure that they're coming back and reactivating those very past due patients. Now, we only looked at the patient base from the last 18 months, and only because the practice hasn't actively been going back to tap into those resources. There are probably a lot more bodies that would come into the practice if somebody reached out. So I like whatever patient communication system you're using, I like the fact that they're getting text reminders and all of that. But what needs to happen there is also connecting with those patients that are overdue. We have to open that resource as well.
Yeah, so the platform that I use, it actually has a campaign for that. It's called the Patient
Exactly.
Campaign. So,
but if you open that up right now and patients actually start calling in to make their appointments, you don't have room. Exactly.
So the step number one is absolutely hire a full-time hygienist.
And when did I say to do that? When did I say to do that? Yesterday, tomorrow. Right? Yeah.
So the old, I may even just keep the older hygienist, and just add another hygienist, because we have 2 unused ops right now. We're not even using 2 of the ops, so I might as well just bring on another hygienist immediately and just let her start working and get the patients reactivated and go from there. The seller is willing to do hygiene checks. He's just been suggesting that I do them simply to meet the existing patient base. But the seller has been very easygoing, and he's willing to do anything. So he's been pretty good about everything.
But again, I love that he's willing to do whatever it takes to make you successful. But at the same time, you're only one person, and you won't be able to be everywhere, right? So I think as you expand hygiene and you add more hygiene, you will just not be able to do all of the checks. So that's going to take a couple of weeks before you've got a hygienist going. Yeah, you can keep meeting people for sure. And he can talk you up. He doesn't need you to physically be there to be talking you up and how great you are. Lots going on. Okay, so hygiene bodies are going to help us feed the doctor schedule, right? You're going to be busy.
How many hygienists do you think I should be having long term here in the practice?
As the practice continues to grow, I want you to have as many hygiene days as you have operatories to fill those days. Okay. You need a body in hygiene.
It may involve opening Saturdays as well. Sure.
You can always lengthen hours at some point. You can always, and listen, like I said, this is a coach's dream to be working with you. I think you really need some strategic help going forward as the practice grows. So, because there's so many things being thrown at you now, and to really plan for the future instead of like having it occur as it occurs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Okay. Yeah. You haven't even marketed the practice yet. I mean, honestly, you're probably getting internal referrals just because you and the seller are nice and, your team's nice. But when you open that floodgate, you're going to get more patients in there as well. And it just has to be a routine. It has to be habit to make sure that they're appointed ahead for their next appointment, because again, you're having patients come through the door, but if they're not going to come back, then you just need to reinvent the wheel every month, and you don't want to do that. You want to grow, you want to expand. So to your point about all of these specialties, I would say kind of put that on the side and talk to your coach eventually about that. Right now, you want to concentrate on the patients that you have now coming in. And
another reason why a lot of patients walk out the door without scheduling treatment is because the way that the treatment is presented is not good at all. It's basically the price is just shown, the value of the treatment is not stated. And this is done by my main assistant, and I've tried to tell her, look, but it's hard to tell somebody who's twice your age what to do. I'm 28 years old. She's in her late 50s. It's hard to tell someone to change something when they've been doing it for so long. So long term, maybe she might not be the best fit as well. Maybe nobody might be the best fit for the long term vision. And it's all a matter of just taking action, I think.
Well, let's go back to our discussion about assistants being assistant. If she's going to be an assistant and she's a great assistant, then that's maybe where her ideal spot is. And when someone doesn't necessarily close dentistry, they don't feel good about it either. So I'm sure that she must recognize and realize herself that she wants to be an assistant. So when you have that conversation, you're actually allowing her to let you know what she feels better doing. And I'm pretty sure she's going to say, like, I'd rather stay in the back, right? So if that's the case, then and you can guide her in that direction. You do need someone up front that's going to be doing treatment planning. So you're right. She's not the long-term solution to this. The long-term solution is finding someone that can close the dentistry and of course, someone that you will train into that role.
Yes, okay? Absolutely. You're right. Yeah. Don't let her go. Keep her in her role, and then bring someone who actually does that well.
Correct, because you need an assistant. If she decides eventually she's not going to stay on for whatever reason, then you can find another assistant. But have her continue on as an assistant, because you do need assisting help, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So hygiene, doctors' schedules, we need you and your associate to both be doing hygiene checks. Sure. Start looking for a potential associate. I'd like to see you go down to 4 days a week and 1 day to manage this team that's all of a sudden going to become larger. And really work with that person. If you think that office manager is the right candidate to really be in a leadership role, I feel like that person will need some help and vision from you, and really getting a sense of where she can really affect change and putting the practice in the positive direction. And then you said it from the beginning, but this isn't a priority number one for me in terms of marketing, right? I'd at least like you to have a presence, because if a patient is wanting to look you up, a neighbor referred that patient, I'd like you to have a presence. That doesn't mean that you are going to do Google AdWords right now. Let's fix some of these, let's put some strategies in place.
Yeah.
But it would be good for you to have a presence, to start having some reviews.
Definitely.
And to start, continuing on that. And financially, then all of that fixes itself, right? From the perspective of everything that we're going to do is going to have a financial gain ultimately. And you're going to realize that gain sooner rather than later by putting this in place now.
Right. Absolutely.
Okay.
100%. And another challenge is we've been growing. and it's tough to get a staff that isn't incentivized to suddenly work harder as well, because they're paid. Everybody's paid hourly. They don't have the same incentive to care about the growth, So I also wanted to put in some sort of an incentivization structure for everyone, so that they also are have the same vision that I do. So they also want the practice to grow. When I first started, the biggest pushback I got was that, oh, this is our job, we love our job, like we're very comfortable here. They have no plan to grow. None of them, none of them want to see the practice grow, because they've been here for so long, so comfortable. So that has been the main challenge for me, honestly. It's kind of it's something that's kind of easier said than done, but it's definitely, I have to evaluate who I want to keep really long term, who I want to replace. If someone is not gonna even respond to getting incentivized, then they're not going to be a long term fit really here. I think I'd say that's the main challenge for me so far. I
Okay.
agree with everything you said. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's kind of address your question about bonus program. So at this point in time, you haven't put any structure in place necessarily. You haven't asked them to go out of their normal positions or normal way of working, right?
Mhm.
So at this point, I'm going to say that's one of those things where you're still Mr. Nice Guy. If you're putting a
Yeah.
bonus program in place now and you haven't really made any changes, I would say you're not replacing anybody at this point. You're adding team members. And as you add those team members, and as you add the patient base and you add structure in the practice, there are some team members that may turn over. Not the end of the world. You'll find other team members, once you have some kind of baseline and a foundation in place, then we can start talking about bonus, because bonus means over and above my normal position. See,
Right.
that's what the word bonus means, right? You're giving a team member a reward for going over and above what you're asking them to do. At this point in time, I wouldn't necessarily be giving them a bonus for just what you're asking them to do, which is what they're being paid to do. Now, I
Yeah.
get the fact that it was a previous owner. I get that. But I think there are things that we want to do foundationally here before we actually give someone a bonus over and above that. Now, you can look into like right sizing the team's salary, for example. Like if you feel someone's underpaid because they've been there for a while, what does it mean to be today a dental assistant in your city and state, basically. So I would encourage you to make sure that that's right sized first and foremost before you're giving anybody over and above. Okay. And then once you've got that infrastructure, you've got the team in place, you put some goals in place, then you start to talk about bonus. But in my opinion, that's a conversation for you and your coach to have at some point.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Awesome. All right.
Yeah.
So you have all this written down, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot going on here.
There's a lot going on. Okay, so let's go over it then.
Let's go over it again. Okay.
So
So
number one.
number one is what on that list?
Add hygiene.
Add hygiene. Yep. Add hygiene. We're going to add how many days of hygiene?
To get to 10 total.
As a first step. As a first step. Okay.
Yep.
That's going to feed the doctor schedule.
Yeah.
Okay. We need the doctor to be doing the exams. Yep. Associate feeding the schedule. You're going to hire the team members that you need. Figure out who's going to be an assistant, who's going to work up front. Then you're going to hire some team members.
Yep.
And then you're going to give them those job roles. And the team is going to be trained in those roles.
Hire team, separate roles, train for the roles.
There you go.
Okay.
There you go.
the team, I'm thinking, at least one assistant, one extra assistant, and then convert the front back to just staying at the front. And then we'll have two true front desk and two true assistants in the back, two true hygienists in the back, full time. Everybody's full time, and just go from there.
And in your case, you will need 3 people up front. Okay, so remember, I said you want two changes. If you're going to have that assistant who goes back and forth, sit in the back, then you've got 2 assistants in the back. Again, that's another stepping stone here. You're going to have 2 full-time assistants in the back, but you're slowly going to need a 3rd assistant, because I feel like you're going to work with 2 and he's going to work with 1.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
And yep. And then you're going to have 3 people up front, basically.
Yeah. And have a true financial coordinator to present finances. Have someone to reactivate the patients. Basically, have someone to call, pick up the phone, rather than just emails and texts to get the patients back in the door.
There you go.
Yeah,
you got it.
Gotcha. And then
then you're gonna call us back, and you're gonna come back on the podcast, and you're gonna tell everybody how that went. Okay?
Absolutely, yeah, I will. I'm looking forward to that. Looking forward to that day for sure.
Okay, awesome. Well, listen, thank you so much for being our guest today, Tim. It was a pleasure speaking with you, and I love the fact that we were able to give a lot of good tidbits here for the audience as well. So thanks so much.
Yeah, you're welcome, Suzanne. Thanks for having me on and for all the great info. I think it's going to help a lot for me.
All right.
Sure.
Awesome.
Take care.
Welcome back to Alex and my wrap-up discussion in the outro here. And we sort of talked about, right before the interview started, we talked about that concept of, Suzanne really prioritizing things well and breaking them down. And that's one thing that our coaching department does really, really well. And, look, Matt and I have been very honest about the fact that our coaching department, we feel coaches better than we did one-on-one. And, we feel like it's a much more complete, better offering the way it currently is. And that, that takes some humility to admit that someone else is better at something than you. But I hope you see why now. Like the way that Suzanne is able to really, do that, where she can take a complex picture, take a vision, take where they're currently at, and then teach a very systematic prioritization, a treatment planning process, is why we're able to have a coaching department with coaches that are not Suzanne, because she's able to teach that process and deliver that in a way that Matt and I were just sort of like, all right, this is the next step. See you next month, and much more informal. And so you really got to see that on display. And I think the biggest thing that offers is he has a new team. He's a new owner. You got to pick your battles. So Alex, can you talk about that a little bit from our perspective? Like I remember when I was a new owner, you focus on 1 or 2 things, 1 thing per department. I think you get 1 thing per hygiene, 1 thing for assistants, and 1 thing for front office at any given time that you're working on. And that's it. And knowing what to pick in each of those departments, that's where I think the prioritization of the treatment plan really comes in.
Well, yeah, as a new owner, you're constantly, every day, you're under the microscope of your existing team. And you want to do everything you can to gain the trust, especially of those people that you consider to be long-term fits. So part of that is not that you have to completely ingratiate yourself to them, but you do need to do what you can to make their lives, not easy necessarily, but not to heap too much on them at once. Mm-hmm. So 1 thing at a time, just from a traction perspective, makes a whole lot of sense. And figuring out what is the most necessary thing to do is so key. The tendency as a new owner is to be in the whirlwind and then spin your wheels thinking, okay, I'm going to do something. Something's better than nothing. For example, Tim talks about bonus structures. Like, bro, why are you talking about bonus structures right now when your practice is underperforming and you can't get a patient in for six weeks? Like, we need to get our priorities in order here. And that's what coaching brings, is that simplicity. And you were talking about Suzanne and our entire wonderful coaching department being able to take all of these data points and come up with a cohesive game plan. That's because there's a method. There's principles. There's general principles that we use from analytics-based practice management to tie together all these different data points. And that's why Suzanne's able to systematically go through and say first this, then this, and not focus on a freaking bonus structure when you're 2 months into practice.
And so, let's go through the recap and sort of the things that she had talked about, right? So she had talked about getting hygiene to 10 days minimum. And we talked about that a lot in part 1. So let's just, for anyone who didn't listen to the part 1 outro, Alex, you want to just kind of quickly talk on the reasons why we want to expand the hygiene department that way?
Right. So right now there's an inverse relationship of what it should be between the doctor days and the hygiene days. So right now there's too many doctor days, not enough hygiene days. We're scheduling way too far out. Tim can't get a new patient in for 6 weeks. And so we need to increase that capacity so that everything else downstream of that can happen. We can't grow to meet goals. We can't grow the new patient flow. We can't do any of these things that Tim wants to do. We can't get to a stable $1.5 to $2 million practice without adding hygiene. So clearly that's the first step. He does zero marketing, doesn't have a lot of web presence. So it's senseless to pour into the marketing budget unless you have a place to put those patients to whom you're marketing. So first order of business, without a doubt, expand hygiene.
Absolutely. And, it's funny because we say that a lot, but my gosh, it needs to happen a lot. And right, the reason is just from a logical standpoint, you have an excess of doctor days, not enough exams. So once you add more hygiene, you have more patients doing more exams, doing more doctor treatment. It's kind of common sense. I don't know how else to say that other than it's common sense. It really is. And so then he talked about marketing, right? And marketing, I want to talk about marketing because I think this is a point that's missed, is people think that they need to market right away. And Alex, can you talk about from Tim's perspective, why that's very clearly not a good move?
Well, marketing is predicated on the idea that you need butts and chairs. Tim has an overabundance of butts to fill his chairs already. They have been in his practice. They just haven't been properly reappointed when they were leaving. So he could launch, and they touched on this, they could launch a reactivation campaign without having to spend any on marketing. He could make a much needed front office hire to round out his front office team to 3 front office people, and then launch that reactivation campaign without having to spend a dime on marketing. Then when he's added enough capacity to where he has some open spaces, then you start tinkering with the marketing. He's in a very, very enviable position in that his problem is a good problem to have. Lots of patient demand, not enough patient capacity. Easy fix. Suzanne brought up the distinction between where he's at with his team and where he needs to be. One of the most crazy parts of this whole interview was the tendency of the floater position, where the assistant who masquerades as a front office person or vice versa gets called unceremoniously to the back by the seller. He barks out her name and then she comes running from the front office to assist him on a procedure. Talk about a lack of systems. So Suzanne correctly points out that second to only to expanding hygiene capacity, he needs to hire a front office person, an assistant, and then you have a more stable foundation to build your $1 to $1.5 million office. And figuring out what those roles need to be up front is a clear, second order of business compared to getting the hygienist in.
And so in my graveyard of accountants that I've had, one of them actually did something I actually liked. One piece of their report I actually appreciated, and they put marketing. They didn't put it in a marketing category. They put it in a growth category.
Mm-hmm.
I liked that.
Mm-hmm.
I liked that a lot. And
they're playing to their audience.
Yeah, growth expenses. And I was like, the growth, the G word. I like the G word. George starts with the G, growth. So a lot of synergy there. And it was, so, still not my account, but anymore. But growth, I took that and I said, okay, let's rethink about this, right? Let's say Tim wants to do, he's clearly on board with spending money on marketing, right? So his practice right now, he did $78K last month. If we annualize that, it's like $940,000. Just kind of mental math should be about right. So we got 940. So what's a good marketing percentage of his budget? 6%? If he's trying to grow to 2 million, like he's got to be a little bit more aggressive. What's an aggressive percentage of your revenue to spend on marketing?
6 to 10. I've heard anything between 6 to 10.
So let's be conservative because he wants to stay lean and mean, right? We talked about that. So let's do 6%. Okay. So he's got 6%, which puts him at almost 5K a month. So he has 5K a month to dedicate towards growth expenses. So we have a budget dedicated to growing his practice. We can do whatever we want with that money, and the objective is to grow the office as quick as possible. That's the objective of marketing, is I'm going to put money out there to get more patients to grow my practice. So let's not call it marketing. Let's not call it spending on direct mail. Let's call it growth. So if I have $5,000 a month to grow this guy's practice, what am I doing? I'm not marketing. Not a chance.
No, not right now.
Yeah. I mean, right, like we've talked about so he has, what does he have? He has opportunities in overdue recare. His mindset is holding him back from growth more than anything else. So obviously that's why we keep harping on coaching, right? So you use part of that growth budget for coaching, and you use part of that growth budget for hiring people before your practice has grown. So like that marketing budget of burning 5K a month on growth, reposition that in your mind to like, maybe I hire a front office for $2,000 a month to grow my practice. Or maybe I hire that hygienist. I think that would be the next move, right? So growth budget wise, we get coaching plus hygiene. That's our growth budget. Then our practice grows. Now our 6% growth budget is higher. So now I can afford something else. And you keep throwing things in your growth budget, but you think of it as a growth budget as opposed to a marketing budget. So right now his practice, like there's so many things that could grow his practice before new patient flow is an issue. You have overdue recare, you have a lack of hygiene capacity, you have a reappointing issue, you have a staff organization issue, you probably have a case acceptance issue. You got so many things to focus on. I would not focus on marketing or spending any money on that until I have those things in place. And so I feel like that also goes in along with Swell and online presence we talked about a little bit. And like those we include Swell in our coaching for a reason, because it's like you plant seeds. You're planting seeds and you water them, but it takes time. And so while we're working on other parts of the practice, we want to get ready to start marketing. But your marketing works a lot better and is a lot more cost efficient when you have a good online reputation and presence. And so we start that right away because that takes a lot of time. And so in a coaching relationship, we always start with Swell as a necessity. That's why we include it with everybody. We don't make it a decision, so that we can start getting those reviews so that 6, 7, 8, 9 months from now, when we've handled a lot of these issues and his growth budget can be used towards marketing, then we're ready. We have an online presence. We have a staff who's organized. We have doctor schedule. We have the proper number of hygienists. We have the proper capacity. We have everything in place. We're good at presenting cases now. We're good at scheduling treatment. Now we market. It's a much different world. We have a better online presence. We're better at answering the phone. We're better at getting patients in the office. We have more capacity, and we know how to reappoint them. All of those things start happening when you do it at the proper time. But I want people to start thinking about your marketing budget as your growth budget. And like people spend $3K a month in marketing that might not need to spend. They might be better off spending that money internally in their practice, right? And I would like people to start thinking about internal ways to grow your practice, hiring staff, right? Coaching is definitely one of these expenses. You talk about, referral programs. There's a lot of things that you could do monetarily to grow your practice internally through getting organization and systems with your team. And the growth expense, I think, is a great way of thinking about that, as opposed to a marketing expense. Because a marketing expense is saying it's like a specific type of growth expense, but like you're really just trying to grow your practice. So like, let's just call it what it is. It's a growth expense. So thank you, former accountant, for that one. Very much appreciated. So next thing I want to talk about is we talk about, the office manager situation. Alex, do you want to touch on that at all?
Yeah, it's a classic case of the office manager being an office manager in name only, and not in function. So that was a George Hariri special that he helped me out with, is making sure that if you're going to have an office manager, enable that person to truly be an office manager. So this person in Tim's practice is a glorified insurance coordinator. And Suzanne brings up the point that there needs to be some delineation between insurance coordinator, patient care coordinator, and then as you grow, add a third position to focus on, like hygiene, for example, to drum up all of the repeat business that's been walking out the door. So yeah, his office manager isn't even the best at closing cases. That's what we found out, is that for some reason his lead assistant is the one that presents finances and is the one that is most adept at getting people to commit to treatment. So there's a lot of wonkiness to how the office dynamics are. And Tim, I think right now, being 2 months in, displays that hesitancy to rock the boat too much. But I think once he has a clear plan in place, a to-do list, a punch list, a progression that he can follow, then he can start really making some traction.
So Alex, his goal is $2 million. So $166K a month.
Yep.
How long do you think that would take him if he did the right things?
If he did the right things, he could do it in 2 years.
Really? You think it would take that long?
I mean, that's conservative. I've seen it done with our clients in less time than that, but that's assuming mindset's dead on. That means coaching, that means making the right hires, that means building an office culture, that means curating all the different myriad systems that you have to curate to get to a $2 million practice. Like, it took me 1 year to go from 1.5 to 2. And, that was me basically maintaining and still being conservative. But then once you take the training wheels off and you come into your own as a leader, it could happen faster. I just know.
I think I was asking, if you were to walk into this practice, let's just say you were to swap out Tim, how long would it take you to do 166K?
A year or less.
Yeah. That's what
Probably
I was.
less.
9 to 12 months was the number I had in mind.
Yeah.
This is, and go ahead.
With the right mindset, with the right approach, I mean, all the pieces are there. And he's right at the very beginning of the episode. He talks about how enviable of a situation it is to have an overabundance of patients and have all that potential. He keeps going back to the word potential, and that's true. And there's a lot of dentists out there that are, mining for a practice like this that has all that potential, that when infused with the right personality and the right systems, you can predictably go to $2 million. And there's lots of markets in the country where this isn't even possible. So no, I think Tim has all of the bones of a really good practice.
And so I want to kind of pivot the conversation a little bit to, like that people think that's abrasive. So I've heard that feedback before. The confidence and the certainty that we think we can grow practices is abrasive. So I would like to break this down fully, and I would like you to see the practice through my, Alex's, Suzanne's, our coaching department's eyes. We got 2,500 active patients in the practice right now. My practice currently has 2,200 active patients. So if you tell me that there is a practice out there that is able to do $2 million in revenue without needing a single additional patient and has an abundance of new patients waiting to schedule, what you're telling me is the process of going from where he currently is to where he wants to go is 100% internal. That's what I'm hearing. I'm looking at this practice. It's all green lights. It's 100% internal. So what's holding us back? Staff organization, empowered office manager, scheduling protocols, front office systems, doctor mindset for sure, and proper team. How long do you think it would take me to do that? 9 to 12 months.
Yeah, within a year.
Well, actually 6 months, and then you need 3 months to kind of watch the growth happen, right? But
yeah,
that's the challenge that this practice is presenting, which is why we feel confident that we can do it in that short amount of time. But it takes a full recare cycle to fully reappoint. So we need 3 months to implement a lot of these changes. Then we need 6 months to reappoint a lot of these changes, and then it compounds on itself. But that's why we say 9 to 12 instead of 3 months. Because really we could do a lot of these things in 3 months, but we need a full recare cycle to really compound it and grow it. So you can get to the full 2 million. So if you think I'm abrasive by saying 9 to 12 months, I'm going to keep saying it. because it's the truth. I mean, I doubled the size of my practice in 9 months. Like it happens all the time. It's possible. And if it upsets you, it's because you don't think you can do it. And in this case for Tim, very clearly can do it. So I mean, double his practice is 1.5. Like that's not even 2. Like 2 is 2.5 times. And we feel 2 is straightforward. I'm going to use the word straightforward because I know it pushes people's buttons, but it's the proper word here. This is straightforward. It's a straightforward plan. Nothing external needs to happen. This is 100% internal. It's 100% repeatable. This is straightforward.
Well, every new acquisition has problems, and these are the problems that you want.
You want these problems.
He did a great job of selecting the practice. That's the first thing. And that's one thing that we got wrong at shared practices early on, was not understanding the importance of
selecting the practice that could grow quickly.
Exactly. Growth practices. Because you can buy a practice that's available, that's nearby, that's in your neighborhood, but if it has a tiny amount of patients or horrible reputation or only has 3 operatories, like there's countless things internally that you cannot control. But this one checks all the boxes.
So let's commend Tim, because I mean I've slammed him, but like, you know, Tim bought a practice. We talk about it now, like Tyler talks about the right path as opposed to the right practice. He bought the right path to a group practice. He bought one that has growth opportunity, that has 8 ops, that has an abundance of patients, that has everything you need to grow quickly to your proper size. He bought the right path, and yeah, his practice was doing 750. Now he's going to have very little debt on a $2 million practice. You know, did he say how much he paid for it? I don't remember.
He didn't say.
So let's just say he's paid $600K. Now he has a practice at $2 million. You know, $2 million of collections is worth, usually those practices go for 100% of collections. You know, the rare $2 million practices are rare. They go for 100% of collections. He's now gained $1.4 million of net worth in the process of growing a practice. He chose the better path, right? Imagine if, like the old advice that we used to give on season 2, I love how we reference like former things we've said, and like half of it's just wrong. And one of the things we used to say is like, buy the biggest practice you can that cash flows, right? That was like industry standard advice. And I think the thing that we've learned is actually you buy the practice that can do the most for your income, net worth, and happiness, all 3. And this one, he did a great job buying an amazing practice. Very enviable situation.
But that's such a nuanced thing, because for one person, the net worth and the happiness piece, net worth you can measure. Happiness, tougher to measure. So you got to know yourself. You got to inwardly look. And before you buy a practice, before you jump off that cliff, figure out, what do I want? Do I want to be a productive solo, or do I aspire to have associates? What do I want out of my life? Do I want the problems of doing dentistry, or do I want the problems of managing a large team? What do I want? And so Tim, you know, has a vision, and he bought the practice that can fulfill that vision. He just has to get there. And honestly, like you said, George, we've been ragging on Tim, but for him to be 2 months into ownership, he's in a great position, and he hasn't waited too long. He did not wait too long. I want this guy in our group pod, in our mastermind, because I know that he would flourish.
Yeah, just a few calls of mindset work would do him wonders. So anyway, this was a great 2-part series, and if I upset people by saying that this is a straightforward $2 million practice a year from now, with the right systems in place and the right coaching and everything, then I'm not apologizing for that, because that is exactly how I feel. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Tim, I wish you the best of luck, man. You got a very nice opportunity here to create a lot of wealth. So please take the bull by the horns and go for it.
Yeah, man, you've got a gold mine potentially there, and there's a path to get there, and we'd love to help you with it.
Awesome. See you guys next time. Another episode of Practice Underwater.